Well, I'm here with another video about a collection of bottles that are not discussed very much, and that's a large capacity in beer and soda bottles. I've come across numbers of them over the years. Being a digger, I dig everything I collect, except for a few bottles that people give me. Other than that, that's part of the basic part of my hobby for me is to dig them and to discover them. So these kind of bottles don't exist very well in dumps. They are big, they're bulky, quite actually heavy glass, but still in all, they're easily damaged. So they're not as common as the smaller sodas and beers. We're going to start out with discussing the difference between a beer and a soda in this case. Beers had a jump on the large capacity bottles on the sodas. They started a long time before. There's a few, and we'll discuss the other soda companies that went along with that, but you'll find that breweries were pretty apt to sell their beer in bulk after they were able to get over the pasteurization and shipping of them. We're going to start with an older beer, and this one has a great symbol. It's a Keebler Stang, and it's Sandusky, Ohio. Now, this beer is, first of all, it's a Baltimore Loop, and that is that it almost sort of like a hutch where a bottle had an inner ring which a rubber disc sat in, and you pulled the cork out. It was around for a while, and it's easily dated from the late 1890s, 1900. This is a pretty prolific company. Keebler and Stang, in their own right, were two separate breweries, and they were eventually absorbed into the Cleveland and Sandusky brewery conglomerate. But Keebler started way back in the 1860s, 67 or 68, and they were absorbed. They hooked up with Stang in 1895. Both of those companies were absorbed by the larger conglomerate in about 1898. So they didn't have a long run together. You might find a Keebler. I found them by themselves, and I don't know about Stang. But this is a good example. Now, there is no capacity on this because back then it wasn't important. Another beer bottle that was popular was, let me think, let me look at here. Well, to be exact, Hensler probably was a beer, and you can see by this time they had the capacity of 28 fluid ounces. And here's one of the points I want to make here about these bottles. They all pretty much look about the same size if you really look at them, but if you look at when they started, were needed to put the capacity on them, then they sort of vary. This Hides and Company from Brooklyn was they're all mostly all machine from then on. I got one or two that aren't, but here's a one that doesn't have any capacity, though it's registered. That came in around 1900. Getting back to the earlier bottles, as you can see, none of these have capacity on them. This one is a really nice Phoenix from Boston. This beverage company was a Nerve Food. They sort of like were rivals with Moxie. Moxie started the Nerve Food trend up there in Boston. Actually, Moxie comes from Maine originally. Now, this Phoenix bottle is tooled, and as you can see by the neck, they really had to adjust the body to fit the size of the standard crown top. Talking about Moxie, I was lucky enough to dig a very early Moxie bottle. These didn't start until the 1880s. It also seems to have a Baltimore loop blob. It has star under there, which various companies had. Glass companies use that. But Nerve Food this is the granddaddy of all the Nerve Foods, and started in Maine and went to Lowell, Massachusetts. Some man who, I forget the name of the guy who started this in Maine. Maine has now claimed it as their state drink, although it's mostly famous for being from Mass. And this is also patented, but there isn't a capacity on this old bottle. But they are the earliest. That's the earliest of these that I have, that I believe. Then you go on to some real fancy bottles. This is Star Bottling, again from, I think it is from, Perth Amboy, New Jersey. It is a early machine made, pretty nice bottle, really. It has a lot of cool embossing, but it has registered, and the capacity here is 1 pint or 12 fluid ounces. Now, what's the difference between this bottle and this bottle in size? Well, there isn't much, but if you notice, this is 28 fluid ounces. If you come over here, this bottle is pretty the same size, and it says that it is 11 fluid ounces. So bottles that look similar in size may not be carrying the same amount of beverage inside the bottle, which I found interesting once I was looking at them. Here's another Peterman from West Hoboken. I could not find any information on this one also, and it's a registered, and it has 11 fluid ounces also, the same as this one. In the back, we have 12 fluid ounces, and this bottle looks like it could carry a little bit more in it. It's a heavy bottle. It's Country Club Beverages, and it is from Springfield. Now, this company apparently was absorbed by another soda company, and it apparently is still around. Ben-Hur, we discussed good old Ben-Hur before, and there's not much known about it, although Wilford, Connecticut is its home base. But pretty much, when you look at these bottles, you may be surprised to realize that they may look the same, but they don't carry the same amount of liquid inside them. You'll find most of these in machine made bottles. Most of them will be crown tops, although not always. Beers were your exception, and right before Prohibition, these also became popular with beer bottles. After Prohibition, that is when the larger bottle became more popular, especially with soda. They are still made today primarily in plastic. The liter bottles are the progenitors of these. So there you have a little tutorial on large bottles. Not many people collect them. I'm telling you, they're not easy to find in good condition. If you're in a dump that it hasn't been molested by fire or kids going around with rocks busting them, you may come up with a few. But so little talk about these. They are still they're very much available. You can probably get them pretty cheap if you're out there buying them, only because of the fact that they don't hold a lot of interest, considering the fact that many collectors do not collect machine-made crowns. That's just one of the things that still prevail in our hobby, that they're sort of looked down on. But as years go by and these bottles become older, they'll be more desirable, I believe. So there you have my little review on large capacity bottles. I might come back to them when I discover more. There you have it. Bye.